All right, guys, April 8th today, and we're going to be looking at chapters 7 and 9 in the Balanced Introduction to Computer Science. Although we're not really doing anything new, you guys learned how to graph functions or program functions last week. We're going to do more of the same, and I'll kind of walk you through what my expectation is for tomorrow's lab, and then show you a little bit from a couple of pieces of code, and then get you going. So it says here that you guys have access to a payroll function. That is already on the Google Classroom. You can open it up, that's all there. And what you need to be aware of, and I'll show you that function in a little bit, is that most of the code has been written for you. And so what's on there is really good code. You don't have to mess with it, there's no errors, just go with it. You're going to be finishing a function that's already written, okay? And so the code that's already there has some text boxes that are going to ask the user for gross salary, the federal tax rate, the state tax rate, those three things. And so in your program, in your function that you write, you're going to have to retrieve that information from the user, and then you're going to have to calculate, well, what is the federal tax that you're going to pay? So you have to take the gross salary times the federal tax rate, okay? What is the amount of the state tax? Well, that's going to be that gross salary times the state tax rate. And the amount of the net pay. Well, if you guys haven't heard this term before, if I take your gross salary and I subtract the two taxes, I'm left with my net pay. And so that's what we're going to be doing. You'll also notice that he said there's a round money function in there, and I'll show you that in a little bit, which automatically takes something and rounds it to 2 decimal places. So you may need to utilize that to give answers in the proper form, okay? And we can talk about that as we go. If you scroll down just a little bit here, this is what your output should look like. So when you initially run the program, you're going to get some text boxes that just ask you for the gross salary, the federal tax rate, the state tax rate, and when you press the button, it should look like this, okay? Your gross pay is, your federal taxes, etc. And these are all dollars and cents, so these need to be sent to that round money function in order to retrieve it, okay? And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Let's take a look at some actual code now, you guys. This might take a little bit, but while we're doing that, I want you guys to think about how you're gonna implement this as we go. Let's see here. Hopefully this loads up the way we want. If not, we'll have a different way of doing it. Okay? Sometimes it takes a minute to load up a PowerPoint. Remember when you create variables inside your functions, you guys, because you're retrieving it from a text box, you need to parse float this material. So when you do federal tax or gross salary equals, it needs to be parse floated, and then you're going to use document.getElementById to retrieve it from the box. But it needs to be parse floated because we're going to use it as a number a little bit later. Okay? Yeah, it's going to take a second to load up here, I guess. It's funny how when you want it, it doesn't load up. So let's see here. We'll see what loads up here in a second. It should be coming. There we go. Now we're in it. Okay, we'll just make it bigger. We'll go from here, you guys, okay? Sorry about the pause. Let's take a look at this. This is a portion of that payroll shell that you guys are given. And so this is the bottom, this is the body. And you'll notice that it says, please enter the following information. Gross salary, you've got a text box that's called gross pay box. So when you use document.getElementById, you're going to use gross pay box as that ID. Okay? Federal tax rate. Now, the federal tax rate, you got to be careful with this, you guys. I might type in 10 for federal tax rate. But that's 10%, you guys. So when you do your calculations later on in your function, you are going to have to divide by 100 at some point to make that an actual percentage. So if I put in 10, then my actual federal tax rate should be this number that I retrieved from that divided by 100, so that it's a decimal. It's 0.1 instead, because that's what I'm going to multiply my gross pay by later. Okay. Same thing with tax rate. State tax rate, I might put in a 5. Well, it's not. If you put in a 5 and you multiply by 5, you're multiplying by 500%, which isn't what you want. So at some point you're going to have to divide by 100 there. Okay. Then there's a button. On the button it says calculate taxes and net pay. Well, you'll notice the only thing on that on click is to go to this calculate function. Okay? So in your calculate function, your job is to retrieve the information that's in those text boxes, save them as variables. Okay? And then you're going to need variables for your calculations. You're going to need one variable for your federal tax. And you're going to multiply your gross salary times your federal tax. And you're going to multiply your gross salary by your state tax and create a variable for that. And then you need a variable for net pay, where you take gross salary minus federal tax minus state tax. And then you're going to need a document.getElementById, output div.enterHTML, so that you can update this on the onClick. And then you're going to actually put the output, right? Your gross salary is, your federal tax is, your state tax is, your net salary is. All of that will come in after that .enterHTML. The other thing to keep in mind here, you guys, maybe move on to the next one here, is that you need to utilize this round money function. Because if you calculate, let's say your gross salary is $2,340.02, and you multiply that by 7%, the decimals are going to go out past 2 decimals. And so you're going to need to use this function. Okay, and so how do you use a function? You saw on the other one, on the on click, it just said calculate money and then a parenthesis. This one is expecting a parameter. It's expecting a number to come in. So when I call this function, I'm going to type in round money, but I need to send it something. So for instance, if I created a variable called federal tax, okay, so federal tax equals document.getElementById, federal tax amount dot value, and I parse floated that, okay, and then I wanted it to be dollars and cents, so I then go federal tax equals round money, and I send it that variable. So I put a variable in there, so it will send it that number, it will round it to 2 decimal places and send it back, okay? So you guys need to be aware of that. Look in the book for examples of that a little bit. Also, we could maybe address it if we do a Google Meet on the day of the lab. Okay, so what you're seeing here, this part's good. This code you do not have to change. But if you'll notice here, that calculate function, your curly braces are here. It says put your code here. There's nothing inside of there. You guys need to fill that in with your code, okay? If you have questions during our Google Meet tomorrow, we can hopefully address some of that, or email me. We'll try to figure out what we can do. Good luck, you guys. Thank you.